Word stick. Description: a long, thin piece of wood or other material. It can also refer to a flexible rod, often used for walking or stirring. It describes a basic object or a tool with a slender, elongated form. Phrases of example. First, he picked up a stick and leaned on it, enjoying the feel of the rough wood. Second, the shepherd's crook, a simple stick, had been his constant companion. Third, it was a sturdy stick well. Word proceeding. Description refers to a course of action or a legal process. It describes how something is being carried out or handled, often in a formal context. It can also indicate a written document detailing a plan or steps to be taken. Phrases of example. First, the proceeding was a farce, a mockery of justice, all for show. Second, the committee's proceeding, though slow, was meticulous and fair. Third, the formal proceeding established a clear path for resolution. Word adverse. Description means creating an unfavorable or negative effect. It describes conditions, situations, or impacts that are harmful, detrimental, or working against a desired outcome. It often signals difficulty or challenge. Phrases of example. First, a man must not be afraid of adverse circumstances, for they are the anvil on which we are forged. Second, he was a man who knew what it meant to face adverse times and to not give in. Third, the human spirit can endure all adverse conditions, but it cannot endure a lie. Word amazing. Description means causing great surprise or wonder, very good or impressive. It describes something that is remarkable or exciting, often expressing a positive feeling about something seen or experienced. Phrases of example. First, what an amazing thing it is to be a human being. Second, the amazing thing about him was his utter lack of fear. Third, it was an amazing sight, a sea of stars spread out before them. Word residence. Description refers to a place where someone lives, typically permanently. It's more formal than home and often used in official contexts like legal documents or real estate. It implies a fixed and established dwelling place. Phrases of example. First, his former residence was a monument to faded grandeur and unrealized potential. Second, the ancestral residence echoed with the whispers of generations past. Third, the estate's residence stood as a stark contrast to the surrounding poverty. Word competence. Description denotes the ability to do something well, proficiency, or skill. It suggests a demonstrated capacity to perform tasks successfully and often implies a level of expertise. It's used when discussing someone's capabilities or qualifications. Phrases of example. First, his competence as a diplomat was beyond question. Second, the need for competence in these fields is increasingly acknowledged. Third, a surprising competence emerged in their ability to adapt. Word tribunal. Description: a formal body or group of people with the authority to make legal judgments. It's often used in international law or specialized legal contexts, like employment disputes or human rights cases, where rulings are made impartially. Phrases of example. First, the tribunal of history is relentless and unforgiving. Second, the military tribunal's decision was a condemnation of the regime. Third, before the tribunal of conscience, all men are equal. Word paint. Description refers to a colored substance used to decorate or protect surfaces. It can also describe the act of applying this substance. Think of it as covering something with color on walls, canvases, or other objects. Phrases of example. First, the colors of the paint were vibrant and full of life. Second, she loved to paint pictures of flowers and birds. Third, the walls were covered in a fresh coat of paint. Word bush. Description: a shrub or a woody plant typically smaller than a tree, often growing densely. It describes a plant with multiple stems and branches, frequently found in wild or cultivated areas. It can refer to the plant itself or an area where bushes grow. Phrases of example. First, he crouched in the bush, watching the distant city. Second, they hid in the bush, fearing the sound of approaching footsteps. Third, the wild dog darted from the bush, startling the hiker. Word, remove. Description means to take something away or eliminate it. It describes the action of getting rid of an object, person, or anything unwanted. This can involve physically moving something or canceling something. Phrases of example. First, I will remove all doubt from your mind. Second, they can't remove a thing from your mind. Third, remove the idea of perfection from your mind. Word, tissue. Description refers to a thin layer of material, like paper or fabric, often used for a specific purpose. It can also describe a group of cells performing a similar function in a living organism, like muscle tissue or nervous tissue. Phrases of example. First, the nervous tissue of the body, as it were, had suddenly become brittle. Second, the tissue of his memory clung to the edges of the photograph. Third, it was a fragile tissue, easily torn by careless hands. Word, prompt. Description means to encourage or cause an action or response. It suggests initiating something, like a reaction, a discussion, or a process. Often used to describe something that stimulates or provokes a specific action. Phrases of example. First, I need only prompt her, and she will be at my side. Second, a single word can prompt 1,000 thoughts. Third, he prompted her gently, seeking a reaction. Word, improve. Description means to make something better. It describes a positive change or advancement. It is used when something is made more effective, efficient, or pleasant. It indicates a move towards a more desirable state. Phrases of example. First, it is always possible to improve. Second, we can improve ourselves by learning and growing. Third, I want to improve my English every day. Word, convenience. Description refers to the state of being easy to use or readily available. It describes something that saves time, effort, or trouble. It's about making things simpler and more practical for someone, often relating to services or products. Phrases of example. First, she valued convenience above all else in her life. Second, the convenience of online shopping is undeniable. Third, for the sake of convenience, we're meeting at my place. Word, Western. Description relates to the western region of a country, often the United States. It can also describe something resembling the culture, style, or values associated with the American West. It's used for locations, people, or things from that area. Phrases of example. First, the western sky was full of stars, a vast and silent canvas. Second, he dreamed of the western lands, of freedom and opportunity. Third, a western wind blew across the plains, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Word, jacket. Description, a piece of clothing with sleeves, usually made of warm material, worn on the upper body. It's like a coat, but often less formal. It's something you wear to keep warm. Phrases of example. First, he wore a leather jacket and jeans. Second, she pulled her jacket tighter against the cold. Third, the old jacket held many memories. Word, shine. Description means to emit light, to reflect light. It can also mean to perform well or to polish something. It describes a bright, radiant quality or the act of cleaning something to make it glossy. Phrases of example. First, the sun began to shine brightly on the water. Second, let your light shine before others. Third, the stars began to shine through the darkness. Word, specialize. Description means to focus on a particular area of study or work, developing expertise in that field. It suggests a deliberate choice to concentrate skills and knowledge, often leading to a higher level of proficiency or a niche role. Phrases of example. First, I specialize in making sure that things get done. Second, she began to specialize in the study of ancient languages. Third, he specialized in the study of dreams and their meanings. Word, ensue. Description means to happen or develop as a result of something else. It suggests a consequence or a series of events that naturally follow from a particular action or situation, often used in formal contexts to describe a chain of events. Phrases of example. First, any action that may ensue from this meeting will be carefully documented. Second, whatever consequences may ensue, I shall take full responsibility. Third, a great reckoning will ensue, and it will not be gentle. Word, specifically. Description means to state something in a precise or detailed way. It narrows down a general statement, clarifying exactly what is being referred to. It emphasizes a particular detail, person, or thing, setting it apart from others. Phrases of example. First, he specifically requested a room with a view. Second, specifically, she disliked the way he spoke to her. Third, he asked specifically for the blue envelope. Word, need. Description means to require something or to have a necessity for it. It expresses a lack of something essential and the requirement to obtain it. It's used to indicate something is required for a purpose or survival. Phrases of example. First, I need a drink and a friend. Second, we need to do this now. Third, you need only be kind. Word, watch. Description refers to the act of looking at something for a period of time, often for enjoyment or to observe. It can also mean a scheduled program, like a movie or sports event, that you intend to view. Phrases of example. First, I want you to watch me, to learn from me. Second, he would sit and watch the birds fly south for the winter. Third, a good watch is a sign of a good time. Word, dog. Description, a furry animal, typically kept as a pet. It's a common and beloved companion for people, known for being loyal and friendly. It's a basic vocabulary word for talking about animals. Phrases of example. First, the dog sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. Second, every dog has its day, as the saying goes. Third, he was a good dog, loyal and true. Word, fever. Description refers to a body temperature that is higher than normal, usually indicating illness. It can describe a temporary condition or be part of a longer phrase about intense enthusiasm or excitement. It signifies a state of being unwell or highly stimulated. Phrases of example. First, a fevered dream, a nightmare born of longing. Second, the fever of ambition consumed his soul. Third, the fever broke, leaving her weak but alive. Word, minute. Description denotes something extremely small in degree or importance. It highlights a negligible quantity or a detail of little consequence. Often used to emphasize a subtle difference or a minor point, often with a slightly negative connotation. Phrases of example. First, a minute too soon is better than a minute late. Second, each minute is a fresh beginning. Third, the minutest detail can alter the grandest scheme. Word, soak. Description, to absorb liquid rapidly and thoroughly. Also, to immerse something completely in liquid. Figuratively, it can mean to become deeply engrossed in something, like an experience or idea, to a significant degree. Phrases of example. First, the rain seemed to soak into his bones, a damp chill seeping through his weary spirit. Second, the sun soaked the stone walls, warming the ancient courtyard. Third, her grief seemed to soak into the very fabric of the house. Word, earth. Description refers to the planet we live on, the ground, or soil. It can also mean the world in a more general sense, referring to everything that exists. It is used to describe our planet and the ground beneath our feet. Phrases of example. First, the earth has become a graveyard. Second, our feet are firmly planted on earth. Third, the earth is our mother, and we must respect her. Word, while. Description refers to a period of time, often a duration or length of time. It can describe a specific time frame or an unspecified amount of time spent doing something. It is used to indicate for a time or during a period. Phrases of example. First, I watched him while he watched me. Second, he paused while the others continued their journey. Third, she felt a sadness while also feeling a sense of hope. Word percent. Description means out of 100. It's used to show a proportion or ratio. It describes a part of a whole, often used in statistics or to express quantities. It's frequently shortened to percent. Phrases of example. First, nearly 50% of the men in the village were unemployed. Second, the debt had grown to almost 70% of the nation's income. Third, it's a 50% chance of rain tomorrow, so bring an umbrella. Word his. Description indicates possession by a male person. It replaces belonging to him and is used to show that something belongs to or is associated with a male. It's a common possessive pronoun. Phrases of example. First, he felt his heart pounding in his chest. Second, his smile was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Third, his greatest strength was his kindness and his humility. Word incur. Description means to receive something, usually an unwelcome one, as a result of a particular action or event. It often suggests incurring a debt, obligation, or risk, implying a consequence of a choice or circumstance. Phrases of example. First, he would incur a considerable debt in pursuit of his ambition. Second, to incur such a risk would be foolish and irresponsible. Third, she didn't want to incur the wrath of her family. Word prayer. Description, a solemn request for help or expression of thanks directed to a divine power. It is often associated with religious belief and can involve speaking or silently expressing thoughts and feelings. It can also refer to a written version of such a request. Phrases of example. First, I know you expect a prayer, but sometimes a prayer isn't what someone needs. Second, his prayer was not for mercy, but for strength. Third, a simple prayer can change the course of a day. Word heal. Description means to become sound or healthy again after an injury or illness. It can also describe restoring harmony or resolving a difficult situation. It implies a process of recovery, both physically and emotionally, returning to a previous state of well-being. Phrases of example. First, time can heal even the deepest wounds. Second, only time can heal a broken heart. Third, healing comes from within. Word window. Description, a space in a wall, usually made of glass, that lets light and air into a room. It's a way to see outside and sometimes to open and close for ventilation. It's a common feature in buildings. Phrases of example. First, it was a dark, rainy night, and I was staring out the window. Second, she stood at the window, watching the rain fall. Third, I looked out the window and saw a child playing in the snow. Word plastic. Description describes a material that can be easily shaped and molded. It's often synthetic, not natural. Think of things like bottles, bags, and toys. They are commonly made of plastic. Phrases of example. First, the plastic smile was almost as unsettling as his lack of expression. Second, she bought a plastic flower and placed it in the vase. Third, the toy was cheap, made of brittle plastic. Word benchmark. Description, a standard or point of reference against which things can be measured or compared. It's often used in business or performance evaluation to gauge progress or quality, showing how something measures up to an established level. Phrases of example. First, a man's life is only as good as the benchmark he sets for himself. Second, he was a man who had set a high benchmark for himself. Third, the whole world was a benchmark of light and shadow. Word dirty. Description describes something that is not clean. It has marks or stains from being touched or exposed to something unclean. It can refer to surfaces, objects, or even people who have been exposed to something that isn't clean. Phrases of example. First, the rain came down, and the streets were dirty and gray. Second, his hands were dirty, but his heart was clean. Third, the child's face was dirty with mud and joy. Word, ordinary. Description means usual or common, not special or unusual. It describes something that is typical, average, or unremarkable. It's used to refer to things that are not exceptional or extraordinary in any way. Phrases of example. First, he was an ordinary man, leading an ordinary life. Second, she was not a remarkable woman, just ordinary. Third, an ordinary day is a gift. Word, attack. Description means a forceful action or assault, either physical or verbal. It can describe a direct confrontation or a sudden, aggressive action towards a person, place, or thing. It can also refer to a criticism or strong opposition. Phrases of example. First, a sudden, savage attack on the town left many dead. Second, the most terrible attack is not with a sword, but with words. Third, he was prepared for any attack, but not for the one that came from within. Word, picture. Description, to imagine or visualize something in your mind. It means to form a mental image of a scene, person, or idea. It's often used to describe the process of creating a mental representation or understanding of something. Phrases of example. First, I picture him now, standing there smiling faintly. Second, she tried to picture him, but he remained an elusive ghost. Third, he would picture a life where he could be free. Word, alcohol. Description refers to a drink containing ethanol, typically produced by fermentation. It encompasses beverages like beer, wine, and spirits. It's commonly used when discussing drinking habits, health effects, or legal regulations. Phrases of example. First, a man can stand a lot of things, but he can't stand the sight of a good woman drinking alcohol. Second, there is a kind of poetry in alcohol, a certain kind of beauty, but it is a tragic beauty. Third, he was a man who lived on alcohol, and a man who lived on dreams. Word, card. Description, a small, rectangular piece of stiff paper. It can represent identification, payment, or offer greetings or well wishes. It's a common item used for various purposes, from credit to communication. Phrases of example. First, he dealt the cards, shuffling them with a practiced hand. Second, she offered him a card, a business card, a small piece of paper. Third, a playing card fell from his pocket, revealing a hidden message. Word, author. Description, someone who writes a book, article, or other written work. It can also refer to the person who created something, like a play or a song. It's a common word used to describe creators of written content. Phrases of example. First, a poet's work is to name the unnameable, to point at frauds, to take sides, to make an author. Second, the author is dead. Third, the author of the novel is not to be confused with the writer. Word, refer. Description means to direct someone's attention to something or someone. It can mean to mention, direct, or make reference to something. It's often used to guide people or provide information about a person, place, or thing. Phrases of example. First, I refer you to the letter of the 15th of last month. Second, I refer to the recent events as a matter of public record. Third, refer back to our earlier conversation, and you're looking at the problem. Word, criminal. Description describes someone who has committed a crime or broken the law. It indicates illegal activity or behavior that violates established rules and regulations. It's often used to label individuals involved in unlawful acts. Phrases of example. First, the criminal seemed to melt into the shadows. Second, he was a criminal in the eyes of the law, but a hero to his people. Third, a criminal record can make it hard to find work. Word, factor. Description, a thing or element that plays a part in something. It can be a cause, a reason, or an influence. It's often used when explaining why something happens or how it works, identifying contributing elements. Phrases of example. First, the environment is a crucial factor in shaping our lives. Second, patience is a major factor in achieving success. Third, hope is a powerful factor in overcoming adversity. Word, frighten. Description, means to cause fear or alarm in someone. It describes the act of making someone feel afraid, nervous, or scared. It can refer to a sudden shock or a more gradual feeling of unease. Phrases of example. First, she looked at him, and I suddenly felt frightened. Second, the storm frightened the animals and made them hide. Third, nothing could frighten him now. He was too far gone. Word, isolate. Description, means to separate someone or something from others. It can refer to physical separation, like in quarantine, or to emotional separation, meaning to cut off communication or connection. It suggests being alone or detached. Phrases of example. First, he felt compelled to isolate himself from the world. Second, they tried to isolate him from the others, but he wouldn't let them. Third, the illness threatened to isolate her completely. Word, evaluation. Description, denotes a judgment or assessment of value, quality, or importance. It's the process of judging something, often based on specific criteria or standards. Results may be presented in a report or used for decision-making. Phrases of example. First, her evaluation of the situation was spot. Second, a thorough evaluation of all options is crucial. Third, his final evaluation was that they had failed. Word, average. Description, means to calculate a typical value from a set of numbers. It involves finding a central tendency by summing values and dividing by the number of items. Used when determining a representative value within a group. Phrases of example. First, to average a man's life is to lose the point. Second, he would average his life and find it wanting. Third, a man who does not average his life is a fool.